You may recognize our next guest from Tough 20 coming off a spectacular come-from-behind victory at UFC Adelaide. She's facing Paige Vanzant at UFC 191. Alex Astro Girl Chambers, welcome to Submission Radio. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's great to chat to you, Alex. Now, before we get into it, we have to ask you about the Astro Girl nickname. For those who don't know, how did it come about? How much relation does it have to the Astro Boy cartoons?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of relation to the Astro Boy cartoons. I guess there's two meanings to it. I studied astrophysics or physics degree at university, and part of my major was astrophysics, hence the Astro Girl. And also, I guess the second part of the meaning of Astro Girl is, as you mentioned, the link to Astro Boy being, well, Astro Boy used to overcome, much larger enemies. And I guess I've always been the smaller fighter in most of my fights.
Mm. Well, that's exactly right. I mean, let's talk about your big win at UFC Adelaide against Kailin Curran, the come-from-behind win. It's been a number of months since that fight. Have you had a chance to watch it back, and what are your overall thoughts of that fight now that the dust has settled?
Yeah, it took me a little while to watch the footage back. I wasn't too happy with, my performance. Things didn't go as planned. I didn't feel as great as I had planned to. But obviously it's how you finish that counts, and I'm definitely happy with how I finished that fight.
No, sorry, continue on. I mean, I was going to say, yeah, absolutely.
So I watched the footage, and I mean, I guess I definitely learnt a lot about myself in that fight, and when most of my fights have ended in the first round, so to go 3 rounds and be able to push through even when I wasn't feeling great, and even when there were times when I was in trouble, you definitely do learn a lot about yourself. And I'm grateful with the way the fight went, and I'm definitely taking those lessons into my training now for my next fight.
Yeah, certainly. Now, Alex, you told me and Casper right after the fight during our post-fight interview how your coach told you that if you don't go out there and find a way to win in the third round, you're out of the UFC. I'm just wondering, how much of an effect did that have on you mentally going into that third round? Did it give you a sudden rush of energy and put you into the right place mentally, to be able to get a finish like that?
It definitely scared me a little bit. And I'm grateful to have been fighting, in front of a home crowd, and they definitely helped lift me in the fight at the times that I, was in trouble and wasn't feeling great. And I knew when I latched on that Kimura, that was my chance. That I was going to finish it. I knew how important it was to, really finish it there. So, that was my opportunity, and I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Now, when you realised you had Curran and she tapped, you must have had an unbelievable feeling. How long did the win take to set in? And what did your coach say to you after you went out and got the win in the third, like he asked you to?
Yeah, I guess there was a little bit of disbelief initially, that she tapped, and it took a while to sink in. The whole experience of it, getting my hand raised, walking out, talking to some of the fans after the fight, doing the interviews, it starts to sink in, as the adrenaline wears off, and I mean, that's why people love MMA, that you're able to come from behind and pull off a win. It's what makes the sport so exciting.
Oh, yeah, and one of the most exciting finishes of the night by far. Now, we were sure that you'd be on the UFC 193 card in Melbourne. We were very surprised when we saw you being put on UFC 191 instead. Just wondering, were you surprised at all about the card placement and also being matched up with Paige Vanzant?
I mean, I guess I was a little bit surprised, only because, I was overseas in the US on holidays, taking a bit of a break after the fight, and that's when I got the news of the news of being offered the fight against Paige. And so, I realized what an opportunity it was. And so it was a bit of a surprise only because I was kind of in holiday mode, but still training, still, I'm lucky enough to be able to train an American top team in the US. And so, it's always great training in other gyms and learning new things. And so I guess that was the surprise, just that I was in a bit of a holiday mode. But I was, excited at what a great opportunity, what a great fight it is. The UFC, Sean Shelby always, puts on such good matchups, and I really believe this is a good matchup, and I'm excited for the fight.
Yeah, and a holiday up in Florida, there's nothing wrong with that. We'll chat about ATT a little bit later. Paige is without a doubt a big star, even though she's only 21. She's only had a few fights. How do you rate her as a fighter? Have you been impressed with her thus far?
Yeah, I mean, she is an exciting fighter, and hence, why she's become, quite popular. And I like fighting people who can bring out the best in me. And I think this is a great matchup, a great fight for us. And to be put on such a good card as well, as strawweights, featured in this UFC 191 in Las Vegas, being strawweights being the newest division in the UFC, it's great to have this fight on that card. So I'm really excited, yeah.
Now, her performance against Felice Herrig was outstanding. When watching back some of her fights, what are a couple of areas you think she does well, and a couple of areas that you think you can exploit going into this fight with her?
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely improving with every fight, and I believe I am too. She's relentless, and she's tough. She's had some really good fights, and I'm not sure I want to share with you my game plan right now before the fight.
Yeah. Can't let the cat out of the bag.
But honestly, the only way I want it to go is me having my hand raised and walking out of the cage with a huge smile on my face. And I'm preparing for everything, and the coaches here at ATT, are preparing me for everything. And that's really the only way I have it in my head right now.
Well, let me ask you this, because this is an interesting matchup. There's a few dynamics here. Paige is currently ranked number 8 in the UFC strawweight division, and thus far you're unranked. Many expected that she'd be getting a ranked opponent. Do you feel like, because it seems like the UFC trying to build her up, do you feel like you're being put out there as a bit of a sacrificial lamb, and that the win over Paige, this is a win that could really throw you in the spotlight and in the title hunt?
I don't really see myself thrown in there as a sacrificial lamb. I think, the UFC knows this is going to be an exciting matchup, and that's why they've put it on. And I think the strawweight division is, really quite dynamic at the moment. So many changes are happening in the rankings every fight. We're seeing so many changes that everyone in the division is is a very good fighter. So whether you're ranked or not ranked, you got to take everyone seriously. There's girls in this with everyone's really skilled in this division, and that's what makes it so exciting. That's what makes strawweight fights really exciting. So, I guess a win over Paige, I don't know. Like I said, the rankings are just always changing at the moment. I'm not really focused on that and what it'll do. I'm just really focused on September 5th and training really hard for it. And I want to see at the end of the fight.
Oh, certainly right. And if anything goes to show, the rankings don't really mean much, especially now in the landscape of MMA. Now, you're just over a month away from the fight. Just wanted to find out, how's your training camp going so far? And who have you been working on in your preparation for this fight?
Yeah, it's going great. As I mentioned earlier, I was on holiday here, and I had the opportunity to train at American Top Team. They really welcome me with open arms to come and train with them, even though they have I think 4 other girls in the UFC just in the strawweight division. So I mean, I've definitely got some great training partners for this fight, and some really great coaches. And I couldn't be happier with how things are going.
Now, even though the level of training in Australia is catching up to the States, the general consensus is that there's a lot more experienced partners in America, and usually the training is of a higher level. What is it like training at one of the most recognized MMA gyms in the world? How does it compare to your training when you did train in Australia?
I guess the difference you could say is just that, it is, one of the big and well-known MMA gyms in the world. And therefore there are a lot of training partners. And I'd say that's the difference. Back home, obviously, there's not going to be as many training partners. But there are always a way around things like that. In Australia, jiu-jitsu is get the level of jiu-jitsu is getting better. The level of striking's always been good and getting better. And because of that, you do have some good training partners for your MMA. Just the here at American Top Team, kind of everything is all there. You've got your wrestling, your boxing, everything in the gym, everything you need. And like I said, the training partners and some really experienced coaches. It's great, I'm always learning new things every day.
Oh, I bet, I bet. Now, one of the girls over at American Top Team is, of course, Tisha Torres. She's actually had some success against Paige Vanzant, actually being the only girl to beat her. Just wondering, have you had a chance to have a chat with her about Paige and sort of game plan with her, find out a bit more about her, seeing as she's the only one who's been able to be successful against her?
I've had some training sessions with Tisha. I haven't talked to her specifically about, the Paige fight, but I'm working with some of her coaches that, worked with her for that fight. So, I'm there, obviously preparing me really well for the fight, and I'm preparing for everything. As I said, it's MMA. You don't know what's going to happen, and it's about being as well prepared as possible in every area.
Now, you mentioned to us when you spoke to us post-fight in Adelaide that you felt very flat going into your fight, which is partly one of the reasons why it took you so long to kick into gear. How will you be looking to avoid that going to UFC 191?
Yeah, I think that, I was dehydrated a bit for that fight, and, I hadn't been eating as well during the week, and I definitely think that was a major contributor to why I felt so flat. Obviously I don't know 100% what the reason was, and I'm just going to focus on everything that is in my control in the lead up during fight week, and that will be to make sure my nutrition, I'm getting the right nutrition, and obviously I'm staying hydrated and hydrating properly after the weigh-ins and things like that.
Yeah, certainly. Now, you always said that the title is your goal. At 36 years old and a huge fight coming up, do you see this as your year to potentially make a run and get a title shot against Joanna, potentially near the end of the year if you get a win against Paige?
We'll see what happens. At the moment, I'm taking it one fight at a time, and as I said, as I've said, a few times, the strawweight division is such a dynamic division. The rankings are always changing, and potentially, there could be opportunities. If I win this next fight, who knows what could happen for the fight after that. But right now, it's hard for me to, look past September 5th. That's my focus, and I'm doing everything I can to be as prepared, to win that fight, to get my hand raised at the end of the fight. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens after September 5th.
It's going to be an exciting day, September 5th. And, of course, for all the Aussies, it's going to be September 6th because we're in the future. And,
That's
of course,
right,
the time
yeah.
difference. Yeah. Now, Alex, we're going to round out the interview with something that we do with all our guests. It's called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. We fire off a bunch of fun questions at you and you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Kind of like word association. This is the real sort of getting to know you round. So if you're ready, I'll go with the first question.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. You got a bonus at UFC Adelaide. Tell us, what did you spend the money on?
A holiday in the US.
Hey, we would have gone for a barrel of tacos, just letting you know.
What's your favorite country to fight in apart from Australia?
The US, of course.
Of course. Now, is becoming an astrophysicist or robotics engineer still in the books for Alex Chambers?
Ooh. I'm not sure if I've had too much of the brains beaten out of me lately. So, maybe. I don't think so, though.
Take us into your family's reaction when you went from wanting to be an astrophysicist and robotics engineer to a professional MMA fighter.
Ooh, I don't think they were very happy.
It was a risky move. The sport wasn't exactly where it's at the moment. Now,
That's right.
there's an ad, Alex, that plays on Fox Sports that pretty much plays every single time you watch any fights on Foxtel. For anyone listening in America, that's obviously our cable TV. The ad features you, Mark Hunt, Robert Whittaker, and Anthony Perosh doing some shadow boxing in a park at night. And at one point, you're carrying around an old TV. Just wondering, how awkward was it shooting that stuff in the middle of the night? And did anybody call the cops on you guys thinking that you're a bunch of naughty hoodlums?
I'm surprised no one did call the cops because we were in the middle of the eastern suburbs, so
Yeah.
of Sydney, and no one called the cops, I don't think. We were out of there pretty quick. It only took like what felt like 1 or 2 minutes actually of filming. So
Wow.
so if they did call the cops, we were out of there.
You guys should be cat burglars if you ever think of that as like a side career path.
It was actually really fun. It was in the dark in the middle of a park in the eastern suburbs, and like I said, it was 2 minutes and then we were out of there. So it was pretty cool.
You guys are like Australia's version of the Avengers.
Yeah, they're like it's like Ocean's 14 with Mark Hunt, Robert Whittaker, Anthony Perosh, and Alex Chambers. Now, Alex, seeing as you're going to be the closest expert that we'll ever have to this topic, fill me and Casper in. Is it possible for a race of robots to take over Australia, as seen in the Terminator movies?
Are you referring to what's going on right now with Stephen Hawking and Reddit?
I didn't even know Stephen Hawking was on Reddit, but if so,
we're not that intelligent. But explain this Stephen Hawking thing to us.
And should we?
He's been
how worried
doing
should
this
we be?
question and answer thing on Reddit at the moment. Everyone can ask him a question, and I believe that's where it came from. And it's been brought. He's been asked about, the Terminator robots and them taking over the world, and
It's pretty much a lock. It's going to happen.
I think that's where it came up. And, he says that we've got to be very careful, and it's a dangerous thing. And he believes it's something we've got to be really careful about producing these robots.
But what do you think? Probably like 90% likely?
Yeah, we don't want to know what Stephen Hawking thinks. Who's Stephen Hawking? We want Alex Chambers' professional opinion on the matter.
Exactly.
Only one of the greatest physicists in the entire universe.
Yeah, but who has he beaten in the UFC? Has he beaten anyone in the top 10?
Has he beaten Kailin Curran with a Kimura? No, there you go. Enough said.
So what was the question? I missed the question. And can they...
Yeah, race of robots taking over Australia, as may or may not have happened in the Terminator movies. How likely is it?
Well, I think, if you start producing those robots, I think there's, it's quite likely it could happen in the future at some stage if we're not careful.
There you go.
I feel like the Aussie robots would be a lot more laid back than the robots in like the US and other countries.
Yeah.
That's true. That's very true.
You could woo them with beer. They'd be more like in America to be like Terminator robots. Here they'd be more like Bender from Futurama, like really, really just laid back.
Very true.
Now, Alex, moving on to the next question. What's your favorite moment from Tough 20 that wasn't shown or captured on camera?
Oh gosh, there was so many so much happened on the show that that wasn't captured. We were filmed 24/7, and you only saw little bits of things that went on. And I don't know, I'm just I guess getting to know some of the girls really well, and some of the training sessions I did with Jojo and Randa, we were running out in the sunset, doing some extra training. You really get to know, each other when you're doing something like that.
Of course.
But you're looking for juicy stuff, aren't
juicy
you?
Yeah,
stuff,
like
yeah, like-
sushi. Did anybody pee in anyone's sushi?
Yeah.
Is basically what we're asking.
The Big Brother Upper Late version of
No,
Tough 20.
no, that didn't happen. Uh,
I owe you $20, Casper. Now, Alex, is In-N-Out Burger as amazing as people say?
I used to think it was pretty amazing, and I guess it is. But lately I haven't been all for it as much as I used to be. I don't know what it is. Maybe, I've just eaten it too much. But no, for your first few times, yeah, it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, good old In-N-Out Burger. Now, the final question, Alex, what we'll wrap up with is, how are you beating, what's the official prediction? How are you beating Paige Vanzant at UFC 191? We don't want the game plan, we just want the result.
The result, I'd say it'd be, the Karate Kid kick or something. Do I have to
Hey.
pick around?
Yes. To make it, I mean, that's a pretty juicy prediction right there, but to make it extra juicy, the cherry on top, what round are you karate kicking Paige Vanzant in?
Ooh, round one, I'll
That's-
say.
I-
But you'll
I'm
have to, you'll have to tune in on, for you Aussies out there, September 6th to see what really happens.
I imagine it would be like the crane kick. What was it, Casper?
The crane kick.
The crane kick. Are we talking the crane kick here, Alex?
Yeah, we're talking the crane kick.
So are you out there right now, like on the edge of a boat, practicing this crane kick, or are you pulling this thing out of nowhere?
Oh, I didn't realize I had my video on. Can you see that?
Yeah, we know exactly what you're doing. And please put down the In-N-Out Burger. All right, you've got weight to make, Alex. We can't wait, guys. Catch Alex Chambers fighting Paige Vanzant UFC 191 September 5th if you're in America, or if you're an Aussie like us, September 6th for all the time difference. Don't forget to follow Alex on Twitter at Alex Chambers MMA, and tune in for the fight. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
No, thanks very much for having me.